good.
This offense of the Lions, has it changed much since you guys game plan for them last year?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty consistent with, overall scheme. They obviously do a few different things for each team that they play, and they have great talent everywhere. Ben Johnson's a really good coordinator. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows how to game plan for you. And then he's got his wrinkles that everyone sees in, those big highlight plays that are so different and creative. So it's a tough task because they've got great scheme, great coaching all the way around, top to bottom, and really good players on every level.
You talk about those wrinkles. Do you think that's part of the plan, is just to get opposing defenses, wasting time during the week trying to figure out all the scenarios?
I mean, there's probably some aspect of that, but I think it's just he sees something and has ideas and is creative with it and, just thinks of different ways to get guys involved. I think it's about the players that he has, but also something that he sees and might be able to expose.
How much do you have to take into account just the willingness to go for it on fourth down as much as they do? I know last year it worked to your advantage a little bit, but just when you're game planning, thinking like, hey, it's not just going to be.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to be mindful of it. Really, in any team that you play, you always got to understand where you are on the field, what's the personality of the head coach, the play caller, and how they might set themselves up if they're, in that position to go for it. It also depends on, what time of the game. With these guys, they have gone for it a lot. They are aggressive. They've been very successful, and, it's worked for them a lot.
Winters had a career-high tackles against the Dolphins. Are you happy with how he's developed, and can you kind of talk about what he's done since the beginning of the season, when it seemed like he was maybe going, real fast and sometimes too, going beyond plays and things like that?
With him, it was early on. It was just, he was still young and developing, and he had some injuries here and there through camp and early in the season that he's been dealing with. So, with any player, they need reps. So he gets better every week. And just excited to see, how he's going to do these next couple weeks.
What's unique about Ben Johnson's scheme?
Unique is, he'll tweak little things, with who he's playing. I think with some of the blocking, but as far as like the outside zone, the players he has and how he uses them, it's, just what he does in certain parts of the field. It's fairly simple as far as, they're consistent in how they do things, but they have enough wrinkles to where, they just execute well. So that they're on it, they're well coached. Like I said, from front to back, starting with the line, really good offensive line, probably the best in the league. And then you pair that with, how the quarterback operates in Goff. And, when they can run it and they can play action pass, they're really, really tough.
You guys have gone 5 straight games without an interception, so it's not a new emphasis, but what can you guys do to try to – do you study more film to try to find extra ways to get to this possible quarterback?
I mean, yeah, with getting the ball, at first you got to, catch the ones that are thrown to you. If you have ops, make them. And then if you don't, you got to figure out a way to create them. And a lot of times that's, there's been so many close calls, whether it's around the quarterback and, just finishing. I think, the process and the mindset of the guys is right. It just hasn't happened. There's been a few drops. There's been a few times that were really close or the ball has come out. It's been on the ground. Or you can see, if you really look at it, you can see the ball moving. We had some good punches and rips and strips the last couple of weeks. It just, hasn't come out. Or even on some of the contact fumbles that you'll see and just kind of take for granted when you see those on, different games for different people. And it just hasn't quite popped out like that for us. So with the guys that just keep emphasize, taking your shots and keep punching and keep being as pinpoint accurate as you can when you're doing it.
Green has somewhat quietly put together a nice season. What would you like to see from him in these next 2 weeks to kind of propel him into next year?
Yeah, I mean, just the improvement and the confidence to keep going up, because he is very confident. I love how competitive he was. He had some really, really, a really good game last week, actually, in the coverage and the tackling. And, we believe that's who he is. And just with anybody, first let's start with Detroit and have a really good game this one.
What have you learned, if anything, just in the past year? I mean, not that you weren't a coach before, but you weren't a coordinator. I mean, like, just about this job, I mean, anything that you've learned, like, oh, tweak this, next year, or hey, this really worked well, or, just...
I mean, it's a lot would be the answer. It's not really one thing. I think you're always learning no matter what position you're in, but, you think going into it, and you kind of prepare for it. But I think it's just you have to really be able to, roll with the punches and be as flexible as possible and continue learning. I think that's the most important thing that, I've learned, that I got to keep learning and keep growing and being like on top of, situations where you might, always picturing, personnel stuff, because we had so much of it this year. So it kind of happened a few times early in the year, and it really helped me, moving forward. I think that's where the special teams side helped too, is you always have to kind of be looking at who can go where. And I think we just kept pushing, guys getting reps in different positions more, because it happened a lot, whether it was during the week having injuries or in game having injuries, and you only have a certain amount of guys up. And I think that was a good growing process for us this year.
For example, just having
The flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility as far as, hey, have this guy maybe take a few
Mm-hmm.
steps here in practice, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, which is it's kind of how we approached it. Even with Renardo coming in, you kind of know, like, guys have to have that flexibility. But it was just, it just happened more often this year, I think. And that was, one of many things I learned this year.
How much of your calls during a game are kind of pre-planned, this down and distance, this part of the field, we're going to do this, as opposed to in the moment, what your gut tells you?
I think going into a game, most of it is pretty much you've got your pecking order, how you want to do it. And then you try to think ahead of what, if they're doing this, I'm going to go to this. There's not a whole lot of, like big, huge adjustments. We're doing it within each drive. It's not just like halftime is like this one time where you have to do something. If there's in between drives, we need to do it. We talk about it, handle it on each drive on the sideline. If we don't, we've pre-planned, like, hey, if they do this, we'll go to this. This is the next one in this order. So a lot of that stuff is pre-planned, and sometimes you're like, hey, we got to try something different. But for the most part, you'd like to feel like you've prepared and pre-planned for a lot of those different adjustments that can happen. All right. Thanks, guys.
Been like for you, as far as just trying to figure out how the pieces fit?
Well, it's been a challenge, but last week was the first time. I mean, it's not, believe me, I've been in a few games where we finished with a tight end at tackle, so it's happened before. You lose 2 or 3 players in a game. Just to lose 3 players that are pretty much out. That's the hard part. So 3 guys that were starting on a team that already had down. Right now, if you took the guys that are, and I'm not sure of everybody's status, but you got Trent, Feliciano, Burford, Moore, and Banks. That's a starting lineup. Some would say some of you would have been lobbying that being a starting lineup this season. So again, it's a pretty good group of guys, and unfortunately they're down. But it's it's a challenge for me. But it's a great opportunity for the guys. The way I look at it is, you got guys right now, they're going to get in the lineup to have an opportunity to show what they can do. Guys that normally wouldn't get a chance to play get a chance to play. Guys get a chance to be exposed to the whole league and show that they can compete at a very high level against a really good football team. Even though the season for us we're not playing for spots in the playoffs and things like that, but it's still a very, very important game for those players, for all of us, to continue to put forward good film and set our best foot forward going forward, best foot down going forward. So I'm really excited for the guys, and I look at it as a challenge. Obviously, you want to have your best players out there, the best 5. I feel really, really badly for the guys that are hurt. I think Banks is going to be okay. I was just so really, really distraught to think that he might have had a long-term knee injury, and it seems like it's something that won't be as long-term. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that. So, challenging is a good word, but encouraged and excited really for the guys that get the opportunity to go out there and compete and see how they can perform against a really good football team.
You have to, in all the contingency plan that I'm sure you're going through, is keeping Pooney at right guard and Jake at center, are they locked in, or is that something where you may have to move those?
I'm trying to lock them in, because you're trying to have as consistent a play as you can from the 2 positions. You don't want to make it more inconsistent. You like to move as few pieces as you can, so at least those pieces stay the same, and then we're plugging in 3 guys around them.
You mentioned yesterday that you guys have had your eye on Matt Hennessy for a little while. What do you like about him? How long have you been kind of following him?
Well, the draft, obviously, the one good thing with Coach Shanahan and what we've done here is that we've always been very involved in the draft with John and the personnel department. And so you always have a big list of guys. Now, I don't remember if I did Matt when I was here or I was somewhere. I don't remember Matt's year off the top of my head, but I remember talking with McDaniel about him and talking with Kyle. We all kind of looked at him and said, man, we really like this guy. You know, it's like when Bradbury came out, the kid in Minnesota. Same thing, a good fit for our system, a good player for our system. And Matt was that player. We really had high hopes for him. They took him in Atlanta. He was a good fit for them, but then they drafted another good fit, which was Dahlman from Stanford. And then they put him at center. They moved Matt to guard. Matt's more of a center than a guard. So whatever's happened with his career then. So it's really excited. And because of the putting guys on IR, we're able to claim, you're not just getting guys off waivers that are tryout players, you're getting draft picks. You know, Charlie Heck was a pick. Matt Hennessy was a pick. You know, you're getting some guys in here that are legitimate. They were drafted players with high, you know, stock in the draft. So Matt's been a guy that we've always liked. Is a good fit for us, and meeting him, I've not been disappointed at all. He's a good fit.
You may have been asked this before through the years. If Kittle were to have like gained weight, probably a substantial amount of weight, I mean, could he have been like a really good offensive lineman?
Good question. George has a character trait that doesn't lend to offensive line play sometimes. He's wild, man. You know, he's crazy. He's fighting. I'm not saying offensive lineman, just like a D lineman doing O lineman. There's just a little bit of a calmer. There's a lot going on. There's a little bit more thinking. And George is a very smart football player. I'm not saying that at all. I think George would be. Yeah, George could have been a good offensive lineman. He would have had to crowd him in a lot, though. He definitely loves to block. He's a physical player. Obviously, would have had to put a lot of weight to do that, but he definitely has a great block skills and a great attitude about being a good blocker. It's really important to him.
Dumb question, but I mean, when he doesn't play, how big a deal is that to the run game?
Big, really big, and our we filled in obviously behind him. But they're not, I'd say last year when Charlie was there, Charlie was much more of a blocking tight end. We filled in now, and not our other guys aren't as much a blocking tight end. So George really holds up his end of the deal on that. The other guys are more move guys and do a nice job with all that. They're more apt to be able to line up in the backfield and do that, where Charlie was less likely to do that, where Charlie was more of an inline and true Y type player if you're going to categorize him any certain way. So it makes a big difference if George isn't out there.
The discussion this week is with the offensive line in flux. Like, how do you protect Brock Purdy? But how much does Brock have to help your guys out as well, because they're so new to this, or some of them will be so new?
Yeah, and obviously this week we've got a huge challenge in front of us with the team coming in, a great football team, a good defense, and as I've said before, I think sacks, pressures, hits, it's a team thing. That sounds like the line coach deferring, and I've told the story before that I got chewed out for it by Monty Kiffin a long time ago. I'm not deflecting. We have our responsibility, but so does, hey, the ball should have been thrown on the first hitch. The ball should have been thrown as soon as his back foot hit. The first read was open, or the first read busted. So Brock had nowhere to go with the ball, so then he has to try to get to 3, 4, 5, and then the pocket breaks down. Well, is that the pocket? Is it the first receiver who would have been wide open but busted? Was it the quarterback misses the read? It's a hot throw, and he gets sacked. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? It's endless as to what could happen in a play, and then all of a sudden the ball gets tipped and there's interception. And so all those things fit together to say whose fault is it. Every play stands alone. It's really hard to say. Obviously, when a guy gets beat one-on-one, we all can see that. He gets beat and he sacks the quarterback or hits the quarterback and causes a problem. So it's a team goal always, and I'd say this week it's imperative that everybody else be on point to pick up the slack, or we do things to possibly help the guys on the edges if we can, the new guys that we have started in throughout the line. Yeah.
How much discussion do you and Kyle have before that of Kyle asking you, like, what are you guys capable of? What can I call?
I mean, he's very aware, so he doesn't rarely come to me and ask. He knows the situation. The question may be more like, can we hold up at all? I mean, are we going to, no, I'm joking. It's not that. It's Kyle's very aware of what the situation is, and Kyle's very aware of the situation we have up front and what we're trying to get done. But I'd say the guys that we have in there are obviously Nick Sorensen's been here for a reason. He's a backup, and he'll get his chance to start. We have Hennessy in here who's learning quickly. Charlie Heck, Austin at left tackle. I mean, we've got some guys in here that have played a little bit of football, and we feel pretty good with. McKivitz, and then Pooney and Jake's still there. So, I mean, it's not easy. We've definitely lost a lot of players. I couldn't have felt better about the group we had coming into the season. I said it before, I think we had 9 legitimate starters on our football team, 9 guys that were starters in the NFL, in my opinion. And that was a good depth to have, and to think that depth has been blown out of the water, and we now have 5 guys sitting over there that aren't probably going to play again, although there's still some questions on some of those guys. That's a lot of guys, and so, but that doesn't matter. And nobody, like I tell all the time, that film's going to go up whenever this game's played, Monday Night Football, for the world. We'll play the game. It'll be what it'll be, win, lose, or draw. And then you go up there, and in a month or so, everybody's going to be evaluating film around the league. And everybody's going to look at that film. They're not going to care what is what. They're going to look at each guy individually. They're going to look at his ability. They're going to look at his talent, look if he blocked the guy who didn't. And nobody's going to care the situation. Nobody's going to care who was healthy, who wasn't, when you got there, when you didn't. They're just going to evaluate you as the player you are that day. And so it's kind of unforgiving that way. You got to go out and put your best foot forward. And I got to give him a chance. I got to give him a chance to, we all got to piece this thing together to find a way to win a game. With less than, I remember we were in Green Bay. We were in Tampa. We could not beat Green Bay for life. It's a really good team, and we were a decent playoff team too in Tampa at the time. And we finally played them in Tampa and beat them. And it wasn't because it was a hot day. It was a night game, or 4:15 kickoff, something like that. And we had 3 backups on the offensive line that day starting. Now they've been on our team all year. That's different than guys that showed up this week, but 3 backups, and that was the first time we beat them in like 6 tries. It was fun. It was unbelievable, and how we got it done. It was crazy how it got done, but it got done. And I'm not predicting anything this week. I'm just saying that I've been on a team before where you played with backups and you somehow managed that everything clicked right. You got the ball out of your hand, you threw it on time, did what you were supposed to do, and the guys got in the way long enough for us to get it done and be productive enough. Now, the runners had to make plays, the quarterbacks, receivers had to make plays, but the guys were able to hang in there, and it was the funny story was the one time we beat them in like the first 6 tries. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.